I don't know if you remember, but the New York Times did a story about how, there's crazy stuff being advertised on YouTube. And they previously, and so this whole thing is legacy media, meaning the New York Times, NBC News, they're threatened by ad revenue from non-traditional media sources, YouTube being one of them. So what they try to do is scare advertisers away from YouTube news, make it sound like it's all crazy and it should be deplatformed, and then they get assholes like that Carlos Maza from Vox to say that defunding and deplatforming is a solution to speech you don't like, which we all know that's ridiculous unless you're blinded by an ideology. And so that's the game. And they got lefties to go along with it via Carlos Maza, and now here they're doing it again. They're defunding some right wing. So here's Google, which owns YouTube. Think about that. NBC News, by the way, this comes from NBC News. It says two far-right sites, Zero Hedge and the Federalist, will no longer be able to generate revenue from any advertisements served by Google ads. And then down here it says Google bans two websites from its ad platform over protest articles. The two sites will no longer be able to generate revenue from any advertisements served by Google ads. First of all, that's not true. That's an inaccurate story. That's not true. The Federalist has not been removed from advertising on Google. That's not. So that's fake news. That's fucking fake news. Isn't that ironic that NBC News was instrumental in getting this to happen? Well, we'll get to that. By the way, where does this come from? Do you see this? It says NBC News _VC.
Yeah, what is that?
VC, is that for Viet Cong? What is that? VC? The NBC News Verification Center. So the people who lie about every war, the people who hired Brian Williams on purpose after he famously got caught lying about wars, they're now going to be the verification center. Just like we got fact-checked by some cocksucker from fucking CNN who lies to you on the regular about gas attacks and war. That's their name. Fact-checked this show for Facebook. Do you see how this works? These are neoliberal organizations in bed with the military-industrial complex that are pretending to shield us from bad information. What they're really doing is censoring people. And NBC News is at the forefront of trying to get people censored, along with the New York Times. So here's the article, this piece of shit article that NBC News, Google bans website Zero Hedge from it. So here it is. Over comments on protest articles. So Google has banned Zero Hedge from its advertising platform. A Google spokesperson said in an email on Monday that it demonetized the websites after determining they violated its policies on content related to race. We have strict publisher policies that govern the content ads can run on and explicitly prohibit derogatory content that promotes hatred, intolerance, violence, or discrimination based on race from monetizing. So all you have to do is say that one of those news articles is any of those things. You don't have to prove it. There isn't a court. There's no hearing. No one presents their cases. Just some Silicon Valley jagoff with an agenda to push gets to decide. He's going to say it's intolerant, or it's violent, or it's discriminating, or it promotes hatred. They get to who deserves? I don't know, some guy or some gal. Who knows? We don't know. What criteria are they using? Don't know. Google notified Zero Hedge of the policy violations last week and banned the website from its platform. Google's ban comes after the company was notified of research from the Center for Countering Digital Hate. Did they pull this right out of 1984? This is the Ministry of Truth. That's what this is. We'll decide what you can read and what you can't. We'll decide. So this is a way to shut down. This is another form of censorship. Because taking away someone's Google ad revenue is a death sentence in this, and the way things work today in the commercialized news media space, that's how it works. Why? Because Google should have been broken up a long fucking time ago. And they weren't. And now they have this kind of power to decide who gets to publish and who doesn't. Well, they don't technically say you can't publish. We're just going to take all your funding away that all your competitors get to use. That's censorship, especially when 70% of the country gets their news from Google and Facebook. Do you see the problems with having the information flow being controlled by just a handful of people? So the Center for Countering Digital Hate, a British nonprofit that combats online hate and misinformation, and I'm going to guess probably working for some neoliberal organization. That's what I'm going to guess. I don't know. I bet somehow that place is tied to nefarious shit. You're going to find intelligence officers working in that organization if the past is prologue. Because that's where they get their fact checkers from. They get them from the intelligence community. They get them from the weapons manufacturer, neocon think. That's where they get these fact checkers. They found that 10 U.S.-based websites have published what they say are racist articles about the protests and projected that the websites would make millions of dollars through Google ads. Zero Hedge had already been demonetized prior to NBC News' inquiry, Google said. Zero Hedge and the Federalists did not respond to requests for comments. Imran Ahmed, CEO of the Center for Countering Digital Hate. Jesus mother effing what? Oh my God. That dude said it found advertisements for many companies that had otherwise made public statements supporting Black Lives Matter and the recent protests running on the websites. What? We found that lots of those companies are inadvertently funding through their advertising content that is outright racist in defense of white supremacism and contains conspiracy theories that George Floyd and Black Lives Matter about George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. Are conspiracy theories okay about your political enemies like Russiagate? Was that okay? Was that okay to do on everybody you didn't like politically, that they're Russian? Are those conspiracy theories okay? Yes. Yes, they are. How about the conspiracy theories that Assad gassed his own people? Are those okay to Yes. So NBC News is a huge conspiracy theorist organization. MSNBC, one of the worst. Rachel Maddow, off the rails, fucking way worse than Alex Jones. Nuts, out of her fucking mind. But they're going to point the finger at someone else as a conspiracy theory organization? No one's worse than NBC News. No one. Joyanne Reid said said somebody Russian hack broke into her fucking blog. They time traveled 12 years earlier to break into her blog and make her write homophobic stuff. That's NBC News anchor. Google has banned various websites from its advertising platform in recent years, mostly targeting fake news operations. Well, if they were targeting fake news operations, they would target NBC fucking News. But they're not targeting fake news organizations. They're targeting unpopular news organizations that they don't like politically. That's what they're doing. They don't give a shit about fake news. They run ads on fake news 24 fucking 7. You bullshitters. Zero Hedge and the Federalists have become well known in recent years for publishing far-right articles on a variety of subjects. On the recent protests, Zero Hedge published an article claiming that protests were fake, while the Federalists published an article claiming the media had been lying about looting and violence during the protest, which were both included in the research sent to Google. And I saw the news report say that the cops were being peaceful and they were being restrained. I saw news reports and news report person time after time after time saying the cops showed remarkable restraint. Isn't that just as misleading as that? Isn't that just as misleading as that? What? Every time a news organization reports on a police murdering someone, they call it a police-involved shooting. Why do you think they do that? They don't say police shot someone. They say they're involved in a shooting because it makes you think like there was a shootout. So what the news is doing is propaganda on behalf of the cops, like they always do. Google's not going to defund NBC News for saying the cops were mostly restrained, right? But they will their political opponents that are getting advertising dollars from Google, because that's what this is all about. As the Black Lives Matter protests unfolded over recent weeks, hundreds of corporations eagerly lent their support. This includes Google. So Google's on the side of these protests and Black Lives Matter, and they also get to decide who gets advertising on their stories about those protests. Isn't that, if that doesn't fucking scare you, if that doesn't reveal the bullshit that's happening right now, this is about principles, you morons. This is about principle. This is about freedom and liberty. This is about being against censorship in principle. That's what this is about. Is it legal for them to do this? It's legal right now. Why? Because we have a corrupt government that hasn't broken this company up and made what they're doing illegal. It's legal. Doesn't mean it's moral, ethical, or in the spirit of the United States. And it doesn't mean it doesn't have unbelievably chilling authoritarian effects. Is it legal? Yeah, it's legal. As the Black Lives Matter protests unfolded over recent weeks, hundreds of corporations eagerly lent their support. This includes Google, which said it has donated $12 million in funding to organizations working to address racial inequalities. So they're not a disinterested player in this. In its research, the Center for Countering Digital Hate, Jesus Christ, imagine what those people could be doing with their life. The Center for Countering Digital Hate pointed to examples of articles on other far-right websites such that carried advertisements by well-known brands while disseminating false narratives about the protest movement. The issue also poses significant risks for brand security. So they're trying to scare advertisers away from advertising on non-traditional news platforms. That's what this is. And hey, you should worry about your brand security. Carolyn McCarthy, Vice President of Communications and Content at TrueX, a digital advertising company, said companies need to hold Google and other digital advertising companies responsible for where their ads run. The reality is that the brands have to start asking questions. They have to say, what is my brand content going to be running against? And if the other person on the other side of the conversation can't give them a straight answer, then that's a problem. You got to stay away from advertising on non-tradition. You should only give it to New York Times and NBC News. That's the safe place. You see what they're doing? So that's the story. And here, this guy tweets out, this is why Google banned the federal. So the Federalist has claimed CNN. So that goes to this stop funding fake news website, which worked in conjunction to get these bannings happen. Stopfundingfakenews.com claimed that they say that the Federalists claimed the CNN and New York Times reports were lying about white supremacist violence and used black crime as a tag for its articles. Those are the two offenses. I don't know what this is referring to, but I know CNN and New York Times lies all the time. They lie all the time. And if they're not lying about this, let them debunk it. Why don't you defund New York Times and CNN when they lie? Because they lie all the time. Russiagate, one big lie. Weapons of mass destruction, one big lie. Libya, another big lie.
And how those lies fundamentally destroyed people's lives.
That's right.
Their futures, their homes, their children's futures, their entire country.
And so here, from the article, Jordan Schachtel caught this. He says, activist journalists over at NBC News got the Federalist, a mainstream conservative publication. Michael Tracy writes for them, I'm pretty sure. Blocked from Google ads. I'm not an outrage guy, but this is absolutely insane. This is 100% a purposeful censorship and deplatform campaign by a legacy press institution. That's exactly what this is. So out of the article, this is what he highlighted. Google blocked the Federalist from its advertising platform after the NBC News verification unit brought the project to his attention. NBC News is trying to get other news outlets' advertising taken away. That sounds like unfair business practice, because that's what it is. It's nefarious bullshit. It's censorship for money.
I mean, like, Jimmy, your point is taken. Totally get it. Because you could at any moment substitute the Federalist or Zero Hedge for any program, any news source.
You could have defunded us by saying Jimmy Dore says Robert Mueller's a liar. Jimmy Dore says that Russiagate is a hoax. He's lying. He's saying CNN is lying because they are. Jimmy Dore said CNN was lying about Syria. They were. You could do the same thing to us. These are all just people again, nameless, faceless, fucking billionaire bureaucrats in the dark of night making decisions about censoring news. That's what this is. And everybody gets on, we have to get rid of fake news. You know who does that shit? Dictators. Authoritarian regimes. They always have to protect them from outside bad information. I don't need you to do that, because I can take care of it myself. The worst propagandists in the country are the mainstream news. You have to understand that so this guy, he makes a great point. He says you have to understand that getting blocked by Google ads is a death sentence for a publication. The worst possible thing that can happen to your website. The worst possible thing that could happen. So it's like saying, hey, I'm going to open up a swimming pool and I'm going to charge people to come swim in the summer. And then the city cuts off your water. But they keep the water flowing to all the other pools. Go ahead, compete. That's what they're doing. That's censorship. Think of the legacy press as something, this is great. He says, think of the legacy press akin to something of a Mexican cartel. It's all about retaining dominance over the space. They don't want anyone from the outside coming in. So they resort to modern-day book burning and intimidation tactics to get the job done. That is exactly what this is. And of course, the whole story is fake news. So the people who from the website stop funding fake news are fucking fake news. NBC News, fake news. Remember when they said Tulsi was being propped up by Russians? That was fake news invented. That was invented. That wasn't real. They said there's Russian trolls. That wasn't real. It was made up fake news. And here's Google Communications. They tweet out the Federalist was never demonetized. Oh, NBC News was doing fake news in their story about fake news. Do you see what a slippery slope you are on when you start to decide that something is fake news and needs to be censored? This isn't some fucking YouTube jagoff they're trying to set. This is the Federalists. Just someone they disagree with. They don't. I bet they don't even really disagree with them politically. They just don't want them to get advertising money. Get this, in the NBC story, they got added. After publication of this story, Google backtracked Tuesday, clarifying that it was Google. So either way, they say Google clarified that the Federalists had been warned about policy violations, but still had time to address them. It now has 3 days to remove the violations before so that was fake news by either NBC or Google or both. So the people in charge of policing fake news was releasing fake news. Of fucking course they were. Do you see why this is not how it's supposed to work in America? Do you see how we now have the corporation is our government? And our government is now deciding who gets to publish. Because that's the effect of this decision. Are you happy, you fucking morons who are screaming yay, yay about, like everybody at the Young Turks was all happy about them deplatforming, what's his name? Alex. And of course I had to hold a mirror up to them. You're in a news space. You're independent news too. They don't care. Lefties who are for censorship aren't lefties. They're misguided reactionaries who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, who are sowing the seeds for the takedown of any progressive movement. Those same people who push Russiagate are the fucking toxic left. Those are the people wrecking what's left of the left, pushing fucking McCarthyism at any political enemy or adversary and cheering on censorship. What world are you a lefty in? You're a fucking willing tool of authoritarians. You're a fucking authoritarian tool, and you do it on purpose with a fucking grin on your face, you idiots. Yeah. The left was all for censoring. They still are. And I bet they'll be for this. You go watch the other lefty channels, see if they're against this or for it. And Mrs. Krasenstein, these are the never Trumpers, right? So I don't know if you know Miss Krasenstein. The Krasenstein brothers got banned from Twitter. Huh. Did you know that? The I hate Trumpers. She says Google has just banned far-right media outlet The Federalists from their ad platform. I'm sure the GOP will be outraged, but this is what happens when you cover conspiracy theories as though they are facts. You mean like Russiagate? Russia could cut off your power. Russia hacked into the power grid in Vermont. Russia hacked into the DNC server. All of that is fake news. Raise your hand if you think Google should ban Trump next. Russia conspired with Trump to overthrow it. That's all fake news. I'm sure the GOP will be outraged, And if they're not, maybe my husband and his brother can make some more fake accounts and troll them. You know, when I think of all the things the world so desperately needs right now, Trump not having Google ads is incredibly important, isn't it? I mean, sure, we have the police systematically murdering people, and society has reached its breaking point, and the government has abandoned its people during a pandemic where cases are still rising, but Trump will have to find other revenue streams when he starts Trump TV. Am I right? Hey, 2 right-wing blogs don't have money from Google ads. Now we can all go to brunch and talk about Hillary. Yay, let's all cheer on Google and ignore them as they have their algorithms favor news outlets that don't tell you what's really happening at the protests. They're helping. Hey, raise your hand if you want Silicon Valley technocrats deciding what you should and should not see.
I mean, the idea, Jimmy, that Mrs. Krasenstein is talking about Google should ban ... anybody. Right? Like, that's crazy. That's off the chart. You can just, again, substitute that with whomever is your flavor of the week.
Whoever you don't like this week. We should ban them. Cancel culture. So this is another liberal cheering on. This is amazing. Great news. This is, what's this guy's name?
Ricky Davila.
Ricky Davila. At the Ricky Davila. Pretty full of yourself there, huh? The Ricky Davila. Great news, : Google has banned propaganda outlets, the Federalists and Zero Hedge, from its ad platform. They won't generate revenue from Google ads any longer. Meghan McCain's husband owns Federalists. So that's, hey, I don't like them, so let's take away their speech. Meghan McCain's husband owns the Federalists. So, I wonder how they're going to get along now. Take that, Meghan McCain. Take this at most minor setback that pales in comparison to having everything handed to you your entire life. I love that. This is great news. What? They passed an emergency UBI? They're disbanding police nationwide and starting again so we don't have over-militarized gangs murdering citizens. We're actually going to act on climate change? No, but almost as good. Meghan McCain has a minor inconvenience. There's no way this could possibly backfire, is there? Could this backfire? Cheering on censorship? I know some people. Hey, listen, great news. Great news. The public is finally waking up that they're being duped by a Banana Republic corporate coup government further enabled by a police force intended to brutalize them. They're realizing that if they mobilize and don't back down, they have strength and can protest and strike to fight back against this inherently corrupt system. Nah, just kidding. A couple of blogs I don't like got Google AdSense taken away, and I'm really happy about this because I never think about consequences. That's my satirical reading of Ricky Davila's. Don't fucking forget it. And of course, Molly Jong Fast. If you want a bad take on something, she's usually a good go-to. She's full of bad takes. But who funds the Federalists? That's her question. But who funds the Federalists? Who funds them? I don't know. Who fucking cares? How about that? What happens? The Federalists gets defunded, and then police can't use tear gas on people anymore or something? Is that how it works? No? We just live in a less free society? I like how we're going through a pandemic that's only getting worse, and we're put under martial law, and this person's worried about whether or not right-wing bloggers are making money. You know, if you want to fight back against shitty speech, you have the option of making better speech instead of hoping Google stifles somebody, right? You know that, right? Could you imagine this happening at any other time in history? People would be Hey, hey, I know the Holocaust is happening and that's really horrible and people are dying, but I got some good news. Mussolini's podcast stats are down. People are choosing between food and rent right now, and they're like, I hope nobody's funding right-wing blogs. I mean, you can't go to a Black Lives Matter protest without seeing a "Who funds the Federalists" sign. Am I right? They're right up there with, if Hillary was president, we'd all be at brunch right now. Goddamn. So here's what your response should be to this. Here's the bullshit fucking propagandist from NBC, Adele Momoko Fraser, who thanks Stop Funding Fake News. By the way, you got your story wrong. You were fake news. Your story was fake. Federalists didn't get defunded. You're fake news. And then so Greg Price responds to the stupid tweet of her thanking people to help them get other news people censored. That's what she's doing. That's what Adele Momoko Fraser is doing.
From NBC.
From NBC is thanking some bullshit Ministry of Truth website for helping defund and censor other people. And you know how you're supposed to respond to that? How this guy does. Greg Price says, you would have felt right at home in Soviet Russia. Yes, she would have. Here's what Dean Obadiah, I think he's got a show on Sirius XM now, but I think he was at CNN for a while. The Federalist is a piece of garbage publication that smeared me as a Muslim radical a few years ago, and when I asked the editor of the Federalist what his proof was, he blocked me. It's barely one step above the neo-Nazi publications, yet Fox News features its writers. So, I don't know if that's the best tactic to get sympathy when someone smears you unfairly to then call them Nazis. Kind of takes. Oh, those guys, they said I was a radical. Which guys? The Nazis. Do you see how it doesn't? Do you see how you kind of fuck yourself there? And I'm sorry that anybody smeared you as a Muslim radical when you're not. But that doesn't mean you should cheer on censorship. And then you actually do the exact same thing that you're upset about them doing to you. Come on, that is funny. Look at this. Here's Cernovich. Right, everybody knows him. He's the real he's lightning rod on the right. Lightning rod. He says the Federalists never did me any favors. Didn't review Hoaxed, which is I think a movie he did, right? I have no personal loyalty to them. Objectively speaking, they break huge stories. They debunked FISA, and Molly Hemingway is one of the best political writers alive today. GOP didn't break up Google. Too late now. Isn't that why? So the GOP didn't break up Google. Hey, guess what? Neither did the Democrats, and neither of them has any plans to do so, unless you count that 1 week Liz Warren said she was for it. So nobody's for it. This is the one-party rule again. So it's good to see someone criticizing the GOP for being exactly what they are. Did he really expect the GOP to be like Teddy Roosevelt and break up monopolies? I guess so. I guess it's good to have that expectation of your party. That's right. I mean, it's good that he definitely should call them out. And that's so what you're saying. So, because it goes against, I thought, I'm no expert on the right wing or what their philosophies are. But I thought they were for privatized monopolies.
Right.
I thought so. Huh. But you do and that, like, it's the right. Well, I don't want to say. I want to say right-wing deregulation policies is what got us here, but it's also Democrat. So, but Democrats are right-wing now. That's the thing. There is no left in power in America. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, they're right-wingers. They're warmongers who are in bed with the banks and big oil and fossil fuel. There's no fucking left. And they helped deregulate. It was Bill Clinton who deregulated media in 1996, the Telecommunications Act.
And what did that do to media?
So we had 50 giant media corporations in the United States that were really big companies. They got consolidated down to 6 giant companies. So now every TV show, newspaper, magazine, radio show, but that anything is by the same 6 companies. That's it. That's your free market. But he's right to be upset at the GOP for not doing this. I think it's crazy to think that they would ever do it. Wait till Mike Cernovich, wait till you find out all the other things the GOP didn't do. Like they said it was going to give everybody health care. It's going to cut the deficit, going to end the wars. What the fuck? Going to make America great again. Look at it. Look at America. We're in the Great Depression with fucking the military in our streets. But it's good to see. This is encouraging because it turns out Silicon Valley monopolies on the flow of information and then ideas, our distrust for them and hatred for it is not a partisan thing. If someone who's on the right like that, and he's for breaking up Google, it should be pretty easy to do that, right? Oh, that's right. We have a completely corrupted, controlled government, a hostile government to its own people, known as the United States government, run for and by the fucking corporation. Come on. Now who's being naive, Kay? Oh, I'm getting a text from someone that says Cernovich is not alt-right. He's anti-corporate. He got smeared by the fake left. Same. He has a Persian wife, so he denounced that alt-right shit pretty early. Really? I didn't know that he did that. I don't know much about... I don't know anything, almost nothing about those guys like Ben Shapiro and Mike Cernovich. I don't really know much about them. But it's good to see what this shows me. It's good to see that he's holding the GOP and Trump accountable, at least here, and that this isn't a left-right issue. So that should be encouraging.
So, Jimmy, ultimately what this is the idea that capitalism is now, again, undermining freedom of speech, making that fast buck on an ad. Whereas aren't I allowed to watch different programs and, or read different news sources? And are they afraid that I'm just not going to be informed and I'm just going to always go to a site, and just because pulling the ads will make me not want to go to that site any longer?
No, what they're trying to do is to fund that site so it goes away. That's
ultimately, yeah.
Yeah, just like when they pulled the ads off of independent news, they want us to go away, and they still do. I was on YouTube today, and I have autoplay.
Yes.
And I was in the shower, and I was listening to, I don't know, maybe secular talk or something. And the next thing that came up was an HBO political show. And I was like, I don't want to listen to this dick. And I hit it again. The next thing was same thing. I hit it 25 times, and every recommendation from YouTube was a mainstream news source. Every single recommendation. Not one recommendation of an independent news show. The Hill comes up, but people forget. The Hill, that is not independent news. They're not independent. They're owned by a fucking huge corporation.
Which is too bad.
But they still, I like their show. So that I guess that's nice. That's it. I'm done with that story. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? That liberals again, This happened. I had a huge blowout on the Young Turks over censorship like this when it was. Was it when And then immediately they Facebook dropped like 800 pages. A lot of them they got rid of like Cop Watch, shit like that. And I'm like, Jen, that's why you're supposed to be against censorship, even when it's against your enemies. That's why you're supposed to be against it. If Alex Jones is doing something illegal, you can charge him in court. We have a system set up. If a newspaper libels you, you go and you go to court. You don't fucking take their newspaper down while we wait for the court settlement. We already have a process for this. Anyway, so that was, that was a long segment, but certainly worth it. Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?